Of a 5-game homestand at PPG Paints Arena, and in front of a couple of thousand appreciative fans, they erupt for one of their biggest offensive totals of the year. At Gajtka in this Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Penguins washed that nasty taste out of their mouths from Sunday's a horrid performance on Long Island. And despite a shaky start, they got shorthanded a couple of times early on. Tristan Jarry had to make 2 or 3 outstanding saves to keep them level. But then they get 3 in the second period and 2 more in the third. Kasperi Kapanen with a couple of goals. And Evgeny Malkin with a very nice, strong performance all the way through. Maybe a trend for him. We'll discuss that in just a moment. My special guest, though, this evening is a hockey coach himself, as well as a writer and analyst at the Pensblog. His name is Danny Shirey, and he makes his Pittsburgh Sports Live debut here. Danny, I wanted to bring you aboard for a couple of weeks. Found the time to bring you into the fold, and like I've told some previous guests, I love talking to folks who do some coaching themselves, because I think it helps all of us understand the game a little bit better. But I also like how you embrace a lot of the analytics in the game, too. So looking forward to a little bit of X's and O's and a little bit of the number crunching from you tonight. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's go with Gino first. Why don't we? Because Sidney Crosby, unfortunately, had to miss at least this game. I suppose we'll see what the COVID protocol will develop into for him. We don't know if he has the virus, if he was exposed to someone, if he was around someone who was around someone. It's really difficult to tell. Actually impossible to tell without some sort of insider knowledge. But the bottom line was no Sid tonight for the start of a very important 3-game set. It's not baseball, it's hockey, but it was a 3-game set that was starting here tonight at PPG Paints against the team immediately ahead of them in the Eastern Conference, or the Eastern Division standings, I should say. And the Penguins get not just a win, but a regulation win. Heaven forbid, multi-goals, and ended up being not close at the very end of it. And Malkin helps drive the bus, gets a key assist there on a power play goal. But overall, Danny, we saw for the 3rd consecutive game, he was a positive play driver, both in shot share and in scoring chances. And even though he was split up from McCann, looked like those two had something going, but McCann playing second-line center tonight, Malkin still continuing that apparent ascent here. So what are you seeing from him that you like from his game, especially tonight, where there was a lot of that dynamism that has been missing for most of the season?
Yeah, we've kind of seen it over the past 2 games where he's been a little more engaged in the offensive zone, and he's kind of got his vision back, I guess, because he's making those passes and those little plays that weren't there through the first part of the season. But tonight, I really thought he was visibly dominant in the offensive zone. He was engaged. He was battling. He was trying to work to the front of the net. And it just goes to show that those skills and that compete is there. It just needs to start showing up on a consistent basis. And there's also the conversation to be had about him playing with Jake Gensel and Brian Rust versus Brandon Tanev and Kasperi Kapanen.
Yeah, that lineup that the Penguins put out there, not terribly impressive once you got down to the bottom 6, or even the fact that Tanev was a top 6 winger. Miscast in that role. I think we can both agree on that. But at this point, beggars can't be choosers. Jason Zucker's out too. So things are a little thin, or a lot thin, for the Pens at the forward spot. But they get it done here tonight. They get a power play goal. They get a couple of early shorthanded penalty kills, successful penalty kills, I should say, which, well, both sides of special teams have been difficult for them so far. So a lot of things went well for them tonight. But I think maybe the bedrock of this victory was Tristan Jarry, and he underperformed so drastically through the first, 4 or 5, 6 weeks of this season. It looked like it might be a shared net with him and Casey DeSmith. And coming into the season, if you were told that around mid-February, you would say things aren't going well. And I think, things weren't going well from the goaltending perspective. But slowly but surely, kind of like Malkin, it looks like Jarry is regaining his footing here. How significant do you think he was to this performance? Because you look at the final score, 5 goals for the Pens. They get it going on the power play. Kapanen gets a couple. They score on 2 beautiful tic-tac-toe goals as well. So the story of the offense in that way, but this one could have gotten away too. The Flyers certainly had their share of looks, didn't they?
Yeah, and Jari was obviously great throughout the game, but don't discredit what he did in the first couple minutes of the games when the Pens had to kill back-to-back penalties. He made a couple of really nice saves right there that otherwise you might be looking at a 1-0, 2-0 game a couple minutes in, and you've got a whole different story throughout. I'm definitely encouraged by how he's been playing, but just with goaltender performance and how volatile it is from week to week, month to month, and even season to season, it's exciting to see the way he's performing. But I'm also a little hesitant to say, okay, he's kind of reached his level and he's going to be at where he's going to be at. I think it's going to be more of a bumpy ride, and they're just going to have to capture lightning in a bottle when they can.
Are you of the mind that the Penguins need to go for a goaltending upgrade? Is it too much uncertainty for you at the goaltending position, whether it be acquiring a veteran to be a backup ostensibly to Tristan Jarry, or going for someone who could legitimately challenge for that top spot and set up some sort of a competition here in the final stretch of the season?
Yeah, well, I guess it just depends on what game you're asking me after. So if you're asking me tonight, I'm going to say no, they're fine. If you're asking me a couple of weeks ago, I might have had a different answer. But with the way they're currently constructed, even if they did truly need a goaltender, I think they've got needs elsewhere that should be addressed. Specifically, a winger for the top six. I'm not sold, even though he had a great game tonight. I'm not sold on Kapanen as being a permanent top six guy. He can fill in there if he needs to, but if they really truly want to compete for a cup this season, I think they need to add some more firepower up top, especially a guy that can put the puck in the back of the net.
I think it's worth mentioning tonight, Danny, that the Penguins have been slumping in terms of their 5-on-5 play. They've had 4 of their worst shot share games over the past 2 weeks, so like 4 out of the last 8, basically. Coming into tonight, they were right at the bottom of their performance spectrum, if you will, this season. Expected goals, very similar story. 3 of their worst in the past 8 games. So again, they're playing the Islanders in 4 of those 8. So the Isles are a tough nut to crack. We know this. We know they're difficult to generate anything against. But defensively as well, the Penguins weren't doing very well there. They weren't handling some of those situations against the Caps and the Isles, which were all they were playing for a couple of weeks there. But then they get to this moment here where they'll play 3 straight against the Flyers and 2 straight against the Rangers. The Flyers, in case you didn't know, yes, they had the best points percentage in the Eastern Division coming into tonight, better than the Bruins, better than the Capitals, even though they were in 4th place by total points. So they have a couple of games in hand, does Philly. But overall, at 5-on-5, they've been unimpressive in expected goals, 6th from the bottom. They're 3rd from the bottom in shot share on the season. I know Alain Vigneault likes to play the rope-a-dope from time to time. That's more his style, or it has been over his past couple of coaching stops. But does this strike you as an opportunity here, even without Crosby, for the Penguins to, quote-unquote, get right with their overall game? Because, well, we saw tonight at least scoring chances were definitely in their favor, as Philadelphia just couldn't put it together defensively.
Yeah, I mean, if Jarry can stay lights out throughout the week, it's going to make a world of difference. But like we already talked about with the guys they're trotting out there right now, they should be thankful for every good look that they're getting, because a lot of their game tonight was forcing pucks from the perimeter to try and get a deflection or a loose puck out front. And it actually worked one time when I think it was the 3rd goal they scored there tonight from a little Letang perimeter shot by the half wall. But you've got guys like Josh Curry in the lineup, and Anthony Angelo and Sam Lafferty, and these are guys that I'm not convinced should be on an NHL roster. And, you know, you've got Lafferty on your 3rd line. I'm not seeing a lot of production, and those aren't guys that are necessarily great defensively either. So you're just trotting them out there and kind of hoping for the best and hoping you don't get caved in or give up a bunch of goals against.
Now, there were score effects to contend with tonight, but the Penguins did end up getting caved in, even though they were hanging tight as far as shots for and against through 2 periods. The Flyers poured it on late in this one, but even when you adjust for that sort of thing, the Flyers still had a healthy edge in shot attempts. So I'm not saying that the ship has been righted and that everything's fixed, and clearly right now it might just be survival mode for the Penguins, but they get the result here. And for once, they don't have to sweat it out in the final 5 minutes. They get the not quite empty net goal from Mike Matheson from center ice. Carter Hart couldn't make it all the way to the bench. So that one counts against his goals against in his save percentage, unfortunately for him. But it felt like an empty netter. It felt like the nice capper to an evening that was certainly exciting for those of us watching at home and those who were fortunate enough to get inside PPG Paints Arena. Just keep those masks on, please. We want to keep this thing going and at least see some limited attendance. That was at least cool to hear some actual cheers instead of the fake stuff that we've been accustomed to. Danny Shirey is my guest. Coach at his alma mater. Is it pronounced Gahanna or Gehenna there in Central Ohio? Gehenna. Okay, I want to make sure I got that one right.
Yep.
Second straight guest from the state of Ohio. We're feeling pretty Buckeye State heavy right now. I know that much. I don't know what the deal is there, but apparently Ohio's a hotbed for young coaching talent. What do you think?
Yeah, it's actually been great to see the sport blossom here over the past 10 years. I remember when I was younger, none of my buddies were into hockey. Nobody wanted to come over and watch the Pens game or the Jackets game or whatever. But I think the city and the people that live here have really grown a liking for it, and the Jackets being good for a couple seasons ago was a big hand in that. But it's been super encouraging to see the growth of the sport around here.
Let's go to some comments here. Again, Danny does come from a coaching background, so feel free to lob some X's and O's stuff if you want, as well as the usual observations. Walt Flanagan, he's usually our leadoff guy, so we'll go with him. He says, this game could be called JR was right. Matheson, Ceci, and Kapanen scoring all in the same game. Yeah, Cody Ceci, that's not going to happen very often, especially not a goal from the lip of the crease where he put in that Jared McCann one-touch pass. That was the second of two tic-tac-toe goals. I want to get to that first one in just a little bit. But, Danny, I admit, I'm a Mike Matheson stan at this point. I know he's not going to defend very well, but I just love defenders that play more of that rover position, and I think the Penguins needed some of that. They needed a shot of offense from the blue line. The longer things went along last season, I felt like they were just missing that added element, and they needed some help. With the Stars not being at their peaks anymore, with the depth not at its best, or anywhere close to the best in the NHL up front. I just think they need more for the blue line. So, Matheson's going to do the high wire act thing, but at the same time, I still feel like he's got a chance to be more of a positive than a negative. What have you thought of his game so far? Certainly exciting, and like I said, hoping that in the end the positives outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, there's no doubt that when he's on the ice, he's the most exciting guy out there. My eyes are glued to him every second that he's on the ice, and I'm a fundamentals geek, so I love watching guys skate. If I'm watching a terribly boring game, I'll just sit there and watch guys skate because I'm just fascinated by it. And he truly is a great skater. My favorite thing that he does, though, is how active he is in the offensive zone. He is always he would rather jump up into the slot than hold the blue line. And I love that because there's nobody else on the Penguins blue line that is willing to do that. I think that they might be able to unlock him even a little more if they can get Marino going. Last year, his defensive impacts were among the best in the league. But this year, that hasn't really been the case. I'm not exactly sure what the story is or what's going on with him. But if Marino can return to even a semblance of what he was last year and let Matheson kind of take on some more of those offensive duties, I think they might have a really strong second pairing there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Marino getting settled in. And so much of this early season for me, Danny, has been about trying to grade on a curve, realizing that some of these players aren't going to just fire out of the gate like some other guys are. And I think Malkin's certainly in that category. I thought Tristan Jarry was too, where they get their feet under them. They start to feel a little better. I know Malkin's talked about not feeling like he's in great shape, whether that's an excuse or an explanation or a little bit of both. I suppose I'll leave that for the viewers to decide. But it's a reality that some players are going to respond better to this unconventional season setup. So you look at Marino, I think he's been better since that. It was a really tough start for him, no doubt about it. But games were a little bit looser at the start of the season, and now things starting to tighten up, look a little more predictable out there when you try to inspect the patterns and how players and teams are operating. So yeah, hoping for for better there from Marino. And what are your thoughts on defense pairings in general? Because I feel like I want someone who is going to push the attack on every pairing. That's why I like P.O. Joseph with CC. I know that Joseph sat down today in favor of Mark Friedman, the pride of Providence College, who gets his Penguins debut here against his former team. So maybe that bottom pairing wasn't really dynamic, at least in theory, until CC scored. But what do you think about that idea that you want to have kind of a little bit of both, a little bit of chocolate and vanilla, if you will, on the back line in each pairing?
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. And I think some teams kind of run into trouble when they get two defensemen on the same pairing that kind of like having the puck on their stick, especially when they're going up ice, because you got two guys that they're not necessarily fighting over the puck, but they both want the puck on their stick. And it changes the whole dynamic of how you're breaking out of the zone and who is going where, especially with your forwards and where they're aligning in the neutral zone. So I'm definitely with you as kind of having a more stay-at-home defensive-minded guy with a guy who can kind of push the pace a little bit.
Do you think Joseph sitting out tonight is a preview of coming attractions here once Brian Dumoulin returns to the lineup?
I would imagine it would be. I'm still going to be clamoring for Juuso Riikola to get back in the lineup because that's my boy. I think and obviously we've talking about how excited we are to watch Matheson and what he's bringing, but before that trade was made, I wouldn't have done it just for the simple fact that I think Riikola is a very solid third pairing option, and he's making $1.1 million a year. So that's money that could have been spent better elsewhere. But going back to your initial question, yes, I think that once Dumoulin is ready to go, POJ might be finding himself in the press box.
And of course, these decisions aren't permanent either. For those of you who have been fans of what POJ brings to the ice, myself included, it's worth it to realize that injuries happen, number one, as we saw earlier this season, which is why Joseph even got a chance. But also, number two, play can fluctuate, and coaching decisions, when it comes to the lineup, certainly are on a game-by-game basis. And in a season like this, every game is a little bit more high leverage than it typically is in an NHL regular season. Then I think you're going to see coaches kind of roll with it in terms of game by game and try to figure things out and figure out who the hot hand and the cold hand are a little bit more quickly than they usually do. Let's go to a couple other more comments here on YouTube. Dave Gormley says, trade Crosby. No, just kidding. Nice disciplined game tonight. Great PK. Danny, I had a couple people in my Twitter timeline also talk about how they felt the Penguins were more disciplined overall defensively, and some even saying that that's the way they should play more often, to be more of a counterpunch type team. I'm not sure I'd go that far. Maybe with Crosby out, that's more of an idea. But for me, counterpunching hockey isn't typically winning hockey over the long term. I don't think this team is built for that anyway. So how do you feel about perhaps making a slight adjustment with Crosby being out right now? Can a team even do that on the fly, I suppose, would be my question to you.
They can certainly do it in stretches. But as we've seen with all NHL teams that have had structures in place since the first day of camp, things still happen and things still go awry. So if you're trying to change your entire scheme so drastically, there's going to be some loose bolts. And I don't know that they necessarily need to change anything. Their whole system is predicated around grinding in the offensive zone and trying to work the puck to the middle to get a good look out front. I think that the past two-ish games, one of their biggest issues was when they were in the defensive zone, everybody's puck watching and swinging with the puck. I always tell my JV kids they were terrible in the defensive zone because everybody swung with the puck. And I told them that it's more important to anticipate the play rather than reacting to it, because as you can see, when somebody makes a low to high pass, everybody swings up high with the puck, and then the guy down low is wide open. So they're going to send that puck right back. And the Penguins were showing signs that they were going to be doing that a whole lot, and they really cleaned it up tonight.
Do you think it's something about the Islanders, too, that is especially a kryptonite effect to the way the Penguins like to play. Can the Islanders be that just stereotypical bad matchup? Even though the Penguins have gotten some results against them, they haven't exactly been pretty. They've had to rally. And then you see them play against the Flyers, and suddenly they're getting a lot more golden chances. So could it just be an Islanders thing that has them looking a little bit wobbly over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think it really might be an Islanders thing. They're just so annoying to play against. We all know how frustrated guys like Malkin get when they're not getting good looks, or they're not able to get out of the zone. But the other big thing with the Islanders is that they might be the greatest forechecking team in the league, and that's just such a pain to play against. That teams like the Flyers, they're not going to forecheck you as hard as the Islanders, and that's why the Penguins. And in the first period tonight, I thought that the Flyers forecheck was kind of keeping the Pens in the zone a little bit, but they kind of figured it out as the game went on, and it obviously opened up some of those chances for them.
Do you still see the Flyers as being one of the more aggressive forward-checking teams, even with the switchover in coaching to Vigneault for the last couple of seasons?
Yes, but not to the extent of teams like the Islanders or the Knights. But I don't know. I'm not as high on the Flyers or really anybody in the East Division aside from Boston as most people are. I think a lot of these teams are going to be underachievers when it comes postseason time. But I would still have them up there as one of the better forechecking teams, but not necessarily something that you need to plan your game around.
Talking Pens, Flyers first of three. First time in Penguins history, though, have hosted the same team 3 consecutive times in any venue in the regular season, and certainly at the same venue in terms of repetition there. So this is going to be interesting. Have you enjoyed that? Because I have found myself looking forward to that rematch game a lot this year, just to see what the adjustments are going to be, what the emotional reaction is going to be. I've treasured it. I hope that the NHL does keep around some semblance of this with divisional foes in the coming seasons. If you play 6 games in your division, why can't you have a little series like this, whether it be home or away? It doesn't have to be every time you see a divisional opponent, but I think once a year, it's pretty fun to have that kind of a playoff preview type of a thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. In the past month, it maybe got a little annoying just seeing only the Islanders and the Caps, but I'm definitely with you that those two game series are make for some pretty interesting matchups.
Do you like that as a coach too? Because I know you're probably thinking about adjustments all the time when you do coach your teams, or when you're thinking about it, watching it from the couch as well.
Oh yeah, no doubt. One of my biggest things when my team is going up against a team that we've already played is we sit down and go, okay, what do we know about these guys and how can we counteract that to our advantage? So it's definitely a joy for me to kind of sit there and see what kind of adjustments are being made on both sides.
What do you think about Mike Sullivan as a coach? We've seen him for 5+ seasons now, and getting close to honestly being one of the longest tenured coaches in Penguins history at this point. Not a franchise that keeps their bench bosses around for any length of time. Even a guy like, Dan Bylsma, it felt like he was here forever because in the context of this team, he really was, and we're getting there with Sullivan. Do you feel like he has adjusted as time has gone along here? Or has he stuck to the same principles since he was promoted from Wilkes-Barre Scranton back, what would that have been, December of 2015?
Yep. I would probably be a fool to sit here and think that any NHL coach is not evolving with the game as he goes on. But one of my biggest gripes with Sullivan is that he never or rarely would use TV timeouts to his advantage or zone deployment to his advantage. And I actually saw a glimpse of that tonight when they were trying to defend the lead. I think there was about 5.5 minutes left, and there was an impending TV timeout, and the Malkin line had just been out. They came off, and they sent him right back out there before the TV timeout. So those are the kinds of things that I think separate the top coaches. And it's obviously not a deal breaker if Sullivan's not doing that all the time, but I think those are the kinds of things that can make a difference for him.
And do you think there was any kind of adjustment to the way the Penguins were playing tonight, going from the first to the second period? Or was that just kind of like a natural hockey type thing where one team pushes, then the other team's going to have an inevitable pushback at some point? It happens so often, so it's hard for me to read into it a lot of times whether there was some tactical change made.
Yeah, I think it more so just has to do with the flow of the game, especially because the Penguins were shorthanded twice right off the bat. That obviously throws a wrench in your game plans at the start, I guess, and kind of some guys have been sitting on the bench for 10, 15 minutes and haven't hit the ice yet, maybe because they're not penalty killers. So that might take them a few shifts to get their legs going or whatever. And Pierre Maguire is going to sit there and tell you that whatever happens is a great or horrible thing that the coach did in between periods. But I don't necessarily buy that. Hockey's just so fluid that things like that are going to happen.
Let's talk about the power play because, we've gone, 20 some minutes here, and I feel like this might be a new record for this season, holding off on discussing it. What kind of adjustments would you make to that? The Penguins did score a goal tonight. They got the puck into the middle of the ice. One of the things you've been talking about, looking for, getting the puck to the middle. Malkin was there, made a pass to Gensel. I was actually upset with Gensel because he had a half-open net himself. He shovels it back across to Kapanen. Hey, great goal in the end. Little concern they might try to replicate that one in the future, but the principles were right there. The fundamentals were good. They got the puck inside the Flyers' box. They're scrambling. That's the key, is creating those little advantages in small spaces, 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s. The Penguins did it very well there. So what can they do to create that type of a situation more often this season?
Well, every time the Penguins are on the power play and they get off puck movement, which means players that are not on the puck or not standing still, every time that happens, they start to get good looks. And that's how you open up holes and guys get lost in space, because you're not standing stagnant. If you've got your guy up at the point with the puck standing still looking for an option and everybody's stagnant, you're easy to defend. So we've seen glimpses of what they can do when they get that off puck movement and actually attack the middle of the ice. So if they can continue to do that, I'll be encouraged to see where they might end up at the end of the season. But right now they're shooting the puck less than most teams on the power play, and they've been giving up more chances against while on the power play than any other team in the league. So if they can start to shore that up, the special teams might be able to make up a little bit of a difference for their lackluster 5v5 play.
Is there anything to the fact they're giving up shorthanded chances as well, or is that all just connected to the fact they're not doing enough with the puck when they're on the power play?
Yeah, I think that's it. That combined with a lack of poor decision making.
Yeah, and that has come into play. What was it, 2 years ago? They gave up so many shorthanded goals. It was ridiculous. I think it was two seasons ago.
Yeah, it seemed like they were getting scored on shorthanded almost every game.
Yeah, they were better last year, and then, of course, the season was broken up, and we had the quick playoff explosion from a negative side of things. Implosion, I suppose you could call it that. Danny, I want to give you the stage here to talk about the work that you do, and I'm just curious, if I may prompt you, what has made you embrace the data that's available in the sport of hockey? Because a lot of people like yourself who have a coaching background tend to really hone in on the tactical side and not look to some of these predictive metrics that are out there, or even some of the ones that basically just tell you what happened too. You have a nice mix of it in your work, whether it's here on social media, where you are to be found at Shirey Irving, by the way, or at the Pensblog. But why has that been part of what you've put out there in the public sphere?
Well, for me, watching the game and knowing the X's and O's and having the data there really helps me understand what's going on. So I can, learn things that I might not have seen otherwise. And inversely, I can back up points that I might have seen if I see something on the ice. Like when Malkin's out on the ice, I noticed they're giving up a ton of chances in the slot, and I can go check and see they gave up 7 scoring chances in their own zone when Malkin was on the ice. So that's a big part of kind of getting that holistic picture. And the other big thing with it for me is that we read so many articles across all kinds of sports that are just making these blanket statements about guys without anything to back it up. So when I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, I was asked what I thought about one of the Pirates trades, and I said, I don't know, because I don't know anything about baseball prospects anymore, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to. So knowing how a guy actually impacts the game in the defensive zone, rather than saying, yeah, I see him make a couple of stick checks in the defensive zone every game, makes a world of difference to me in my analysis.
Yeah, that's exactly why I like it too. You have to prove it these days with something. Give me some bit of information. In a lot of ways, I don't care what it is, but don't just tell me what you think, what you've observed, because the eyes can lie in a lot of cases. And once we develop a feeling or a bias eventually on a player, then it's really tough to go against that and swim against that grain. So that's just the way our brains are designed, unfortunately. Well, occasionally we look for patterns that aren't really there, so it really helps to have the unseeing eye, if you will, of the data to back it up or refute something, make us ask the right questions. I think it's all pretty pertinent. I'm not saying that you have to definitely agree with the scouting point of view all the time, or you have to agree with the data-driven point of view all the time. But I just want people to ask questions. I want people to not just accept things as they are or as they appear to be, certainly. So where can folks find your work? I know you do some writing at the Pensblog, but you're also very active on social. You share a lot of charts and infographics there too, which are helpful as well.
Yeah, I love sharing those, and I just like putting them out there because I like people talking hockey with me. So it just makes my day having people to talk Pens with, and that is the sole reason that I do it and put the time into it. So it's been working out well so far, and I've been enjoying it.
And last thing for you, how'd you become a Pens fan anyway? Did you grow up in Central Ohio? I know that can be, well, now these days, the Jackets consider, well, not this season, but most seasons, the Jackets consider the Penguins to be their chief rival.
Yeah, so my father and his family are from Pittsburgh. I was born in Dayton, Ohio, and my parents moved to Columbus when I was about a year old. But my mother wasn't really interested in sports. My dad's a Yinzer. So I grew up watching Pirates, Steelers, Penguins, Pitt, and I fell in love with them. And when I was 4 or 5 years old, I wanted to go to Pittsburgh to watch Pens games. I didn't want to go to Nationwide Arena and watch the Jackets. I was trying to go to Pittsburgh. So I just grew up watching them, and my faith in them never wavered.
Well, Nationwide, it was one of the loudest buildings I've ever been in the 2017 playoffs. That was tremendous. I hope that the Jackets can keep it going, because I think that market has a lot of potential for the NHL to captivate the entire state, basically. But also, it just shows how much fun it can be to go to a game. I love the Cannon. I love a lot of what they do there from an in-game entertainment perspective, too. So they built something nice, and the Pens won't see that this year unless both teams advance to the at least the semifinals of the Stanley Cup tournament with the way things are set up. But Danny, they're embedded in Blue Jackets territory. Certainly a Penguins outpost there, and all that he puts online. Shirey Irving is where you can find him on Twitter, SHIREYIRVING. And found out today that's a play on Kyrie Irving. I'm not a big NBA guy, but at least I understood that reference. So
the funny thing about it is I have not watched an NBA game in probably 3 years. So
I always say that I want to watch more, but it runs concurrent with hockey, so I don't have the bandwidth. I have 2 little kids at home and a wife, and at a certain point, I just want to turn the TV off and do something else. So it's usually NBA finals or bust for me. That's how it goes.
Yeah, you only have so much energy to exert into hockey. By the time it's basketball time, I'm like, oh, I'd rather go watch the Yotes and Kings or something like that. So
yeah, I'm the same way. Well, that's Danny Shirey. I'm Matt Gajtka. Thanks so much for watching Pittsburgh Postgame. Look for more from this unprecedented Flyers invasion, 3 games in a row against Philadelphia. We're going to get to know them and get to know the Penguins a lot better here, especially if Sid misses any more games. So stay tuned for that. Thank you to those who watched on Facebook on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now page. And I want to remind you to like and subscribe at Pittsburgh Sports Live so you can get a nice little ding notification on your device whenever we do go live with one of these many broadcasts, whether it's hockey or basketball, college hoops still going on. We had a WVU show on earlier today hosted by Mike Gosti. And believe it or not, the Pirates will be back around by the start of April. So that's just, 4 weeks away, too. A lot coming up on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Keep it here, and I'll talk to you tomorrow morning with Dan Kingerski for our Pens Regroup show.